Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I thank you for taking time out to be at this webinar with the theme, How Can I Choose Integrity and Win in the Maritime Sector? While we are still waiting for some panel members to join us, we currently have here Mr. Demola Bakare. He is the Director and Head of International Cooperation, the ICPC. Also here we have Mr. Vivek Menon. He is the head of the Collective Action and Partnerships, MACN. And we have the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Sajio Pampa, also here. My name is Cynthia Pomudiari. We'll start while we wait for the other panel members to join us. I'll now hand over to Mr. Sajio Pampa.
Okay, thank you very much, Cynthia. We have the exciting topic of how do I choose integrity and win? How do I choose integrity and win in the maritime sector? So what do we mean by this topic? Let's start with our definition of integrity. Our definition of integrity is doing the right things, looking for the best angle. Doing the right things consistently and doing things right consistently. Can you win in Nigeria by doing that? Can you win in the maritime sector by doing the right things consistently and doing things right consistently? Is that possible? So here to discuss this topic with us this morning, we have Mr. Demola Bakare from ICPC, Mr. Vivek Menon also from the Maritime Anti-Corruption Network. Okay, so I think I should give some time to our panelists to introduce the work of their organizations. Mr. Bakare, can we start with you, please?
Thank you so much, Mr. Pampa.
Yes, sir.
At the ICPC, we are for promotion of integrity in Nigeria. And the enabling law gives us the power to receive reports, investigate same, reports concerning corruption and related offenses, to investigate same, and if in the opinion of the commission a prima facie case can be established, to prosecute. We have the enabling legal authority to conduct preventive activities so that corruption will not even take place at all. And when they take place, we'll have a sanction to apply. Part of that preventive methodology is the conduct of system studies and review, corruption risk assessment, especially with regards to procedures in government agencies. In addition to that is the function to educate and mobilize Nigerians to join in the war against corruption. So we have three-pronged responsibility. Duties at the ICPC, the enforcement, the prevention, as well as the public mobilization function with regards to lack of, breach of integrity and corruption in Nigeria. These are the basic function of the ICPC.
Thank you very much, sir. So, Mr. Menon, the Maritime Anti-Corruption Network, what's that all about? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Soji, and thank you for this opportunity. And it's good to see Mr. Bakare here as well. We met last year. It's very good to see you. So very briefly on the Maritime Anti-Corruption Network, it goes back around almost 10 years ago when a group of companies came together and felt that they were being demanded various things from vessels that they operate in ports and terminals, in addition to what services that they've already paid for. So they said that this is something that we cannot tolerate going forward. So a handful of companies, around 8 companies, came together, formed this network in a sort of a movement against such practices in various parts of the world, in various parts of ports and terminals across the globe. And it very much became an industry-led, a maritime industry-led movement or a network which fights such practices which are happening on board their vessels and which their captains and crew face even on a daily basis today as we speak. What we do is try and address these problems systemically. It's also important to understand that ship owners and ship operators are also faced with the new regulations like the UK Bribery Act, the US FCPA acts, and similar international regulations. So they themselves had to ensure that they follow through the whole compliance journey. So we build the internal capacity to keep doing better all the time. And one of the tools we give them is to report such incidents to the MACN in an anonymous format. How that helps is to engage on a port level or on a country level with the respective government agencies to understand how we can bridge common solutions. So this is where we try and engage in a particular country on a collective action level. So it is important to understand that the private sector needs to follow a journey. So we build the internal capacity, but with their voice and with their knowledge, we are able to work in a collective action format in a particular country. And lastly, it's also important to bring in the international stakeholders like the International Maritime Organization, the Chamber of Shipping globally, and also other trade facilitation bodies to try and understand how we can, if not eliminate, we can build levels of resilience in addressing these problems in different countries. So MACN is a group of maritime stakeholders. We represent almost 50% of the global tonnage as we speak today. We have about 140 companies, which comprises of ship owners, ship operators, managers, cargo owners, some of the international flag registries, and also port agents. Why diverse stakeholders? Because it is important that we understand the problems from different perspectives, and therefore we can find solutions that make sense to everyone. So I think I will pause here to reflect on these points that I've mentioned, and I hope that gives you some understanding of where MACN comes from.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Menon. But can I ask you, what does it mean when you say 50% of global tonnage? That sounds really like industry speak. I don't really understand what that means. What does that mean?
Yeah, so this means that we have a group of ship owners which are either trading in bulk vessels, bulk carriers, containers, tankers, especially in the container segment. That is all the big companies. We're talking about, the 70% of the container carriage is where MACN holds in its membership. And so any vessel that calls Nigerian ports, let's talk from a Nigerian perspective.
May I interrupt, sir?
Please.
So this means that 70% of all the companies that do containerized cargoes are members of MACN.
That's
Is
correct.
that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay. Then what about this tonnage? What do you mean by tonnage?
Yeah, so tonnage, when I say 50% of global tonnage is all the ship owners who operate ship. Every ship has a particular tonnage, and we now capture almost 50% of ships which are calling different ports and terminals across the globe. So it represents that many ship owners operating globally around the world. So that is what MACN membership represents. And yes, it is a large number of, when you say 140 companies, they have many ships. We are close to 8 to 10,000 ships we're talking about, which is operating globally 24/7, 365 days, nonstop. So, so this is the kind of impact and the voice that is trying to address this problem unanimously. And so it's very much of an industry-led initiative, an industry voice that is speaking against such practices all around the world.
Okay, so that is a lot to draw from. Let me then quickly follow up and ask you the question then. So what constitutes this barrier to choosing integrity then? What is the kind of barrier globally that is faced by these carriers? Because clearly they call at ports all over the world, and therefore they will have an experience of what it's like around the globe. So what is this challenge that people face when in the maritime sector?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very important question. Sorry, that's a very important question. And I would like to go back to what you mentioned by starting the session by saying, what is integrity? And you said that integrity is about doing the right thing and doing things right. And from a shipping context or a maritime context, I can tell you from my own experience being working on ships, shipping today contributes to, or it is one of the oldest industry that we know of, and it contributes to almost 80 to 90% of movement of cargoes or by volume. That's a large amount of tonnage that we are talking about. Literally, what you see and we sit on and we face today has been on board a ship in some form, sometime in its life cycle. Now, that also means that ships are operated by people. So people, captain and the crew brings their ship to respective ports and terminals. And every time they call a port and terminal, they interact with very many government agencies. And this is part of what we call the vessel clearance process. In order to load and unload cargo, you need to clear the vessel before you can do that. Now, when this interaction happens with government agency, they're exposed to multiple layers of integrity risks, which means it could be in the form of facilitation payments, including cash or in-kind benefits for a job that has already been paid for. Going to your question, why is it difficult to choose a path of integrity? One, I would say, is that ship crew or the master, I feel that they don't have a choice, because they know that when they come to a port, it is their important task to ensure that the ship is safely operated, but also very quickly operated and leave the port. So time is of essence. Time is money, and this is something we are all well aware of. So in order to ensure that the ship is safely operated in the ports and terminals, and as quickly as possible it can leave, they need to perform their duties to their best abilities. So they prepare the vessel as much as they can before they come to port. So they have very quick interactions with the officials. But this is where the complexity of shipping and the rules and regulations which apply uniquely to respective countries becomes a room for some kind of negotiation to happen. So what that really means is the government agencies can use their power and authority and also this complex rules and regulations to somehow negotiate with the master, and in that process delay the vessel. And in that process, ships or the companies would like to do anything, whatever it takes, to ensure that the ships are leaving the ports in time. So therefore, I think there is a challenge in terms of having a choice. This is how it has been. So they feel that there is no choice, because especially you're sitting with a public authority, and if you're not trained to handle public authorities in that format, then you would succumb to what they say. So lack of transparency is a challenge. So they have no choice in understanding what is the right thing to do, though they want to always do things right. They're not able to always fulfill the due to lack of transparency, they're not able to fulfill the doing the right thing part. I think that is where I believe that we have a clear problem in finding in solutions to such vessel clearance processes. I don't know if that gives you some insights of what we are faced with even today.
Okay, this is excellent, because then I almost have to immediately go to Mr. Demola Bakare, because you mentioned that they face a certain level of integrity risks. Mr. Bakare, in your description of the role and responsibility of the ICPC, you talked about corruption risks as well. So how does this link up with the maritime sector? Does the ICPC do anything about risk assessment within that sector?
Yeah, Mr. Kwangba, you will agree with me that the maritime industry is a gold mine. In fact, 8 trillion naira gold mine for Nigeria in terms of trade and its natural endowments. So corruption, inefficiency, and mismanagement in that sector is inimical to the health of Nigerian economy. Be that as it may, ports inefficiency arising from integrity breaches, official collusion, bottlenecks, and poor enforcement of the agents at the port are disincentive to trade and economic activities of Nigeria. We acknowledge the infrastructural challenge that the port sector is facing, and government is trying as much as possible to address that. But the human problems and integrity risk that the sector face, ICPC have taken the bull by the horn by in 2012 conducting what we call the corruption risk assessment of the port sector. We didn't do that alone. It was done in conjunction with a lot of port agencies with the support from UNDP. MACN was part of it because it was actually initiated by MACN. As a report, a report was made at that point in time that ICPC just developed that methodology. And it was considered that, okay, that was a very good opportunity to test the methodology. And we have never regretted doing so since then. So human problems and integrity risk that we face in that sector translates to what ICPC fights: corruption. Because there is always collusion, there is always an infraction of procedures. People deliberately manipulate the procedures. And as an outcome of that exercise, CRA in 2012, a committee was set up by federal government, port sector steering committee, to implement the recommendations that the CRA came up with. Since that time, we have been working. I don't know whether I should continue. On what that report entails and what we have done so far. But CRA was conducted in the sector, and the recommendations are being implemented. We have taken it very far, and it's working.
I want to encourage you, sir, to please unpack for us some of these risks that were discovered and what were the remedial actions proposed for it, so we get a good understanding of why it has been difficult for people to choose integrity in that sector.
Okay, let me start by saying that it was discovered. There were policy and regulatory challenges. Okay. There were overlap functions and duplications of roles by multiple agencies working at the port. But the most important, the most critical of the challenge, of the challenges were the human factors: manipulation, collusion, official collusion, and manipulation. That translates to the incidents of bribery and corruption. You put pressure on the users of port services in order to get something out of them. And as a result of that, our ports was becoming more expensive than ports around other ports around us. That was great disincentive to trade, and Nigeria was losing so much. So these are some of the challenges that were thrown up when infractions were even identified. You make reports to officials that were involved in that infraction. and nothing gets done. So we rather keep quiet, and there was that conspiracy of silence, and the sector was going down. So it was as a result of that certain recommendations were made and were implemented. And I can speak about the grievance management mechanism that was put in place as a result of that particular situation, that you report an incident to the person that that committed the incident and nothing gets done. But that has been reversed because of the system, the grievance management system that was put in place.
Okay, so because of the grievance management system that was put in place, now you can avoid two things from what you're saying. Number one was that there was apathy before, that why should I bother to report? When if I report, I'm reporting to the same person that is perpetrating the illegality, and therefore nothing is going to be done. So why bother to report? That was the first challenge.
That was the situation,
What about the challenge of retribution? Was there, how is this system also protecting people from having retribution? Because also in Nigeria, the reason why people don't report is because they're afraid that they will be victimized for reporting.
What we have done so far, without taking anything away from the internal mechanism of the agencies, most of the agencies, they have their own internal, grievance handling mechanism. But it wasn't effective. Like you said, the retribution, it was a problem. You report and you are penned down for sanction at a later date. If not presently, that nothing gets done. So the impunity of the past are being reversed, because people tend to think that nothing will be done, nothing will happen. Yes. But since 2016 that the PSSP was launched, we have seen a reversal of that situation. Things are being done. People are getting, their grievances resolved. The complaints handling mechanism of the various agencies are working together with the general complaint handling mechanism, and things are being done to redress complaints made by port users.
Okay. I understand that the Nigeria Shippers Council has played the role of acting as a secretariat to this port sector steering committee that you mentioned before, and we're joined by Mr. Moses Fadipe of the Nigeria Shippers Council. Perhaps this is an opportunity for us to ask Mr. Fadipe, what is the role of the Nigerian Shippers Council in Nigeria's maritime sector?
Good morning, Mr. Fadipe.
Mr. Fadipe, can you hear us? Okay, we will come back to Mr. Fadipe then. And let's continue with these barriers to building integrity. Let me ask MACN. So from your perspective, what were the barriers? You had mentioned before that it is a human problem. You also agreed with Mr. Bakari that it's that human interface that became the challenge to being able to choose integrity. You also sort of suggested that when the shipmaster and the crew come, they feel that they are at the mercy of the officials that they meet. And therefore, there's a lot of fear. So I think fear of retribution will be one of it. And maybe also this apathy. So how much of a challenge, or what other areas of challenge do the vessels face when they call at Nigerian ports now, to be specific?
Yeah, so very correctly, I agree with Mr. Bakare as well. There is definitely a human element or a human factor to this. And I must also underline that there are not all, I wouldn't categorize everyone. There are some people in respective agencies who follow through this particular direction, because we do hear successful port calls as well from our members. So that is something we need to take into account. So there are what we call ambassadors of change in all organizations that we work with, and this is where we need to have more of such ambassadors. So the problem, yes, definitely, when a master comes with a ship to a port, and it also depends where you're calling in. It could be a terminal many miles off the shore of Nigerian waters, but still within the Nigerian seabed, where there could be oil terminals or floating production systems. There, the outreach is so far out, so they feel that they are stuck in a place where they have no immediate access to any form of assistance if they are being challenged by such authorities. And the challenge usually arrives with the way the operating procedures for vessel clearance. It could be port health, it could be immigration, it could be customs, it could be port state control. So these operating procedures seems to suddenly come in a different format, which is not what the vessels are prepared for. So every vessel, before they call a port, they prepare according to the guidelines that is available to them from that country, in this case in Nigeria. But the moment they meet an authority on board, the whole narrative is changed. They request for things that are not required. So this, I think we lost Soji there for a moment. Can you still hear me, Mr. Bakari?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I think we
I can hear.
lost Mr. Apapa for a moment. Yeah, I'll just wait for him to return. Yeah. Can you hear me, Soji?
Yes, apologies, my connection dropped.
Okay. No, so just to quickly, I'll just repeat the last 10, 15 seconds. What I was saying is that there is this lack of consistency in applying the operating procedures. So they were not standardized before we got the standardization done. But prior to that, there was lack of standardization in how these operating procedures were applied in different parts of Nigerian waters. And I think that itself was a big challenge, and each individual from that human factor perspective applied it in their own way, which was the biggest challenge we faced, as seafarers or the ship owners faced. In addition to that, they couldn't find a place where they could submit their grievances, where they felt a trusted place, so as to call it, a place where they can trust that these grievances would be taken in a positive sense and they could get some kind of resolution. So an accountability and resolution system was not entirely in place where they could feel comfortable in using. So therefore, these were not reported. They of course reported to MICN as an incident that happened, which was more of a past tense rather than something they could get a remedy right now when an incident is happening. So these were some of these challenges, I would say, that happen on board ships, in some cases even today.
Okay, So then maybe I should go back to Mr. Bakary then and just ask. So how are these standard operating procedures, or what else came out of this corruption risk assessment in terms of recommendations for actions? Because it's sounding like the need to create standard operating procedures was found to be a remedy. Were there other remedies as well? You mentioned also the grievance reporting mechanism, that also was one of it. What else, sir?
Arising from lack of consistency of operating procedures mentioned by Vivek was the plan, by that committee to harmonize standard procedures, SOPs of all port agencies. This was successfully done, and the agencies were trained. So the lack of consistency in application of operating procedures has been greatly reduced. So it means that anybody that manipulates the procedures now is running a very great risk and is on its own, in some balance. So after that, agencies working at the port were equally encouraged to draft their anti-corruption policies. This is something like a code of conduct for their officials working at the port. Things to do, how to do it, when to do it, and how not to do it, including sanction if you do what you are not supposed to do. So most of the agencies working at the port, they now have anti-corruption policies. And arising from those two items, the grievance challenge that Vivek mentioned too, PSSP was developed. And sensitization and PSSP is Port Service Support Portal.
Okay.
It's a web-based grievance management tool. On the PSSP, you have all the SOPs, all the standard operating procedures of the agencies. Anybody can access it on that PSSP on that platform, as well as the tool to register your complaints. And when such complaints are registered, it is known in the same instance by all the agencies at once. So no agency can deny that a particular complaint was made. You can't deny it because it is known by everybody. And the practice is that certain complaints should be handled. There are timelines given to certain complaints. Certain complaints can be handled within 24 hours. In fact, certain complaint will be handled instantly. It can be redressed instantly, depending on the type of complaints, the type of issues involved. But the beauty of this is the fact that while ICPC is not does not operate at the port per se, we are silently operating from within and at the background of that complaints handling mechanism by monitoring it. We are at the back end. So at the instance that the agency receives the complaint, ICPC is aware, and we keep watch on what will be the response of the agency. By and large, most of the complaints have been quickly attended to. Some instantly, some within 24 hours, some within 72 hours. We have seen deliberate effort on the part of agencies to attend to complaints when they complaints. That have been done. But in some of the instances where the faults have been corruption related, we have stepped in. I mean, in some instances, ICPC have stepped in some instances, and arrests have been made.
Okay, Mr. Bakari, I just want to quickly summarize where we are now for our listeners, and also to remind everybody that there's a Q&A button at the bottom, and you can actually ask questions and interact with the panelists and have your say in this conversation by dropping us questions in the Q&A section, but general observations in the chat section of this webinar. So what I've heard so far is that the starting point of choosing the path of integrity, from what you and Mr. Menon have said, is through complaints. Did I get that correct? That people just have to speak up and say what challenge they're facing. Now, but what kind of complaint? It seems like the government has worked with other stakeholders to identify standard operating procedures. How should things work so that anyone who comes knows what are the right things to do and how to do it right? So there's an opportunity to choose integrity in the SOPs. Then you say that there is a grievance reporting mechanism in case they should find out that people are not doing the right things and they're not doing things right. Then what can they do about it? That there's a grievance reporting mechanism, and that mechanism starts with a level of transparency, because it's not only the agency you complain about, but all the agencies at the port will get notification of the particular issue that has arisen, if I understand you correctly, sir. That is transparent at that level. Then also, but there's a promise that there are timelines attached to different kinds of complaints. Some can be addressed instantly. Some require investigation and maybe will be dealt with within 72 hours, but that there are timelines for different aspects that need to be done. So we don't need to be apathetic. We can be sure that some action will be taken and we can track what is being done. That's the second thing that I hear.
Correct.
Okay. I also heard that why this is going on is because there has been training for the officials at the ports, that they've been trained, that they've developed their own internal code of conduct, that they also, through that, because there are now standard operating procedures as well, it is easier to spot those who are chronically doing the wrong thing. Because now everybody has been trained, they know what is the right thing to be done, and they know the right way to actually do it. Therefore, it is easier to spot that, and that there is a level of consequence management that is coming in through the involvement of the ICPC. And the ICPC is monitoring the trends from the back end.
That's correct.
Okay, let's try again and see if we can get Mr. Fadipe into this conversation. Mr. Fadipe, we see you connected, but we can't hear you. Can you please unmute yourself if you can hear us? Okay, I'm still not sure if he can hear us. So I think we will therefore continue. Okay, so we have spoken about the code of conduct and the training and some aspects of consequence management. But sir, are you satisfied that this system can be scaled up? That if I am in Lagos Port, Apapa Port or Tinkan, My experience of the system should not be different to if I am in Bonny or if I am even further offshore somewhere. Will I experience it differently? Are there challenges with compliance based on location or based on agency or based on how far you are from land and so on? What do you think, sir?
The tendency for that has been there. But in order to reduce, such tendency, that farther away from the center, the problem continues. In order to reduce, that tendency, we have sought collaboration and support of diverse, stakeholders. MACN, CBI is a key stakeholder in that regard, because I can remember that we have together carried out ethics training and capacity building. And when people were extensively educated on the SOP, the PSSP, and all stakeholders, not just the agencies, all stakeholders, working at the port. We did that extensively for a very long time between 2016 and 2018. And I think the impact of that will be felt. But more still needs to be done, because we do not, at ICPC, for instance, we do not actually regale ourselves in entertainment. We're not for entertainment. People need to be educated on what is on ground, what is available for them to use. It is after that that people can be sanctioned if they become, recalcitrant, and if they do not do the right thing. That is the philosophy and in-house philosophy of the ICPC. You just don't go out there to be harassing people. Let people know what is it that they're supposed to be doing and how to be doing it. And it is after that that you can. We have done that extensively. And the state that we are in is enforcement mode. For ICPC, we need to enforce those things, because, for instance, MOU has been signed for joint boarding by all the agencies that's supposed to, to board vessels. So if they are not implementing it, problem, and ICPC will enforce compliance, to that MOU that has been signed. In fact, the ease of doing business policy of the federal government imposed it on us as a responsibility.
Yes.
Because nothing that detracts from that will be allowed. So the ease of doing business policy of the federal government must be enforced, and we are up in arm against anybody that wants to frustrate. That. So we are in enforcement mode, if I can say that. But be that as it may, there is still opportunity for publicity, because people may not actually be aware of this PSSP, which is probably the reason why they are not making use of it the way they should be making use of it. So we need, sensitization, we need publicity around the grievance management mechanism. You were going to say something?
Yes, sir, from Joseph Olaoluwa, who identifies himself as a journalist. And he says, good morning, Mr. Bakare spoke about the grievance reporting mechanism. Number one, I want to ask if this platform is widespread among port stakeholders. Do the stakeholders know about this platform? That's question number one. Question number two, in my interaction with the port stakeholders, I have realized that the problems are the same. The last webinar had stakeholders address some of these concerns or snags in clearing goods at the ports. Why have these issues not been addressed still, even though the complaints are widespread in the media? So basically, what he's trying to say is that the challenges are not unknown, the trends are not unknown, the offenders are not unknown. So why have we not dealt with them? And number three, what is the timeline for solving these grievances? That's Joseph Olaoluwa, journalist.
Yeah, the timeline for resolving the grievances depends on the nature of the grievance. Some business to business transaction, if there are issues arising from that, can be resolved instantly. Like I said, there are issues that can be resolved within 24 hours. There are some that can be resolved within 7 days, but the maximum is 7 days. After 7 days, ICPC comes into it. But I can tell you authoritatively that we have not had cause to intervene in any matter, because no such matter out of 87 issues, for instance, that were resolved in 2019. Out of that 87, none exceeded 7 days to resolve. So ICPC did not have to intervene in such matter. So I can tell you that people are using it, but people that are aware of the platform are using it. But the information about the platform, I think, is suspect.
Okay.
Awareness around the platform is still problematic.
Mr. Menon, maybe we should ask you, how aware are ship captains of these arrangements, and are they using it?
Yeah, that's a very important question as well, because it's equally important for the private sector calling Nigerian ports and terminals to be aware and also to use this. What we have been doing with the MACN membership is to raise that awareness and sensitizing the work that we've been doing in Nigeria. So one, everyone is aware that these SOPs are aligned. That means wherever they call, irrespective of any port and terminal they call in Nigeria, they are transparent and available in the Nigerian Shippers Council website where it's located. So they have access to that. And it's also available through the MACN's platform in case they can't get access to the PSSP portal. Secondly, we see a growing number of companies making use of the grievance system. We have seen a successful resolution of cases that have been also addressed directly through the Shippers Council and the respective government agencies who have been involved. So from 2019, I can tell you there were 34 port calls reported into the system, and out of 34, there were 15 incidents that were successfully resolved. So this shows that masters on board ships and vessel operators are slowly getting aware that there is a system, but that's not enough. Secondly, we see they are using it, that they found, okay, we can at least report somewhere now without any backlash or repercussion in any way. And in addition to that, they also find that there is a case closure process as well. So what they have is three choices. They can say no, they can escalate, and when they escalate, they see there's a case closure or a case completion process that's evident to them. And this information goes directly to the operator or the ship from the Shippers Council or the respective agency. It's going through email or they're informed by phone. So we've had some cases where there have been successful usage, not only usage, but the whole case handling has been readily apparent for some of our members. But that doesn't mean that we have covered all our membership. There is still more work to be done. I think that is what we are trying to do. We do one-on-one training for some of these companies as well. We have posters that ships carry in strategic locations on board the vessel. That means any official coming on board can easily see that this vessel follows MACN principles, are guided by the company policy, but also living up to the national anti-corruption policy of the country, which in this case is Nigeria. So the clear indication is given to anyone coming on board the ship. So there are different ways we are trying to raise awareness and make use of the existing system that the government of Nigeria has provided.
Can you give me some clarification? You said there were 34 incidents and only 15 were resolved, or you monitored in 34 cases and only 15 had incidents. I'm not sure exactly what you said there, sir.
Yeah, my apologies. I want to clarify that, and the latter is correct. We in the system we have developed now, which supports the Nigerian Shippers Council to address and eventually, if, the ICPC can investigate these cases. The way it's set up is before a vessel comes to Nigeria, they inform their arrival. In other words, they are pre-reporting the arrival of their vessels. So in that way, the help desk or the council can be aware that, okay, there is a vessel calling Nigeria now. That doesn't mean that when the vessel calls Nigeria, they will have an issue. So from that point of view, we had 34 reportings, pre-arrival notifications given, 34 of them. And when these 34 vessels called, out of that, 15 of them had incidents. Yeah. So, and when they had incidents, these 15 were immediately resolved. Some of them in the time lapse of 2 hours to 4 hours in the beginning, but now we see resolutions less than 60 minutes are happening as well. So 34 ships reported that they're coming into Nigeria, and out of 34, when they came, 15 of them had incidents, and they escalated the case, and they found a full case resolution. So out of 15, all 15 have been resolved. And these numbers are going back from August 2019 to as of November this year. So of course it doesn't capture the whole membership, or it doesn't capture all the port calls to Nigeria, but previously we didn't have any. Now we have, you can say, 34 reportings. Out of 34, 15 had incidents. So I think it's growing. That's why I would like to say there is some evidence of improvements in the right direction.
Okay, so how does this sound to you, Mr. Bakari?
It's a day of joy for me. For me, I think that is excellent. 15 all over 15. That is excellent. But we can do better. If we have more incidents reported, I mean, that would be a better test of the workability of the system. But for now, I think that is pretty good.
Speaking about doing better, I hear that this system now is extending to cargo clearance and also tracking cargo clearance. And now there it's going to be maybe a little more difficult because vessels are fewer than numbers of containers or numbers of palleted goods that are being carried out of the ports now. The question is, can the system cope with an explosion in the numbers of complaints, Mr. Bakari?
If the system can cope with an explosion of business,
yes,
then it should be able to cope with the explosion of complaints arising from the services they render. That shouldn't be a problem at all. Like I said, each of these agencies, they have their internal incident handling mechanism. That is not being out of place. In fact, what I am suspecting is that people are utilizing their internal complaint handling mechanism more, and people are getting satisfaction from it. People do not want their matter escalated to the general public. So that is what I'm suspecting. There is capacity to handle no matter the level of explosion. I think there is great capacity internally and on the PSSP platform to handle any from the explosion in business. So I do not have any fear. It's good business for us.
Well, thank you, sir. Mr. Menon, very quickly, let me ask, because we've run out of time. Very quickly, is there a pattern to the kinds of incidents that you're finding? Like, is it swayed towards one type of complaint more than others, one type of location more than others, one type of agency more than others? Is there any pattern that you're discovering?
Yes, I think from the data that we have collected, there seems to be incidents related to the passports and discharge books of seafarers. That still seems to be a challenge. It keeps coming up, but however, that has been resolved as well at the same time. So quick resolution has also been a success. But it seems to be one pattern that continues to take place, and the other is also in terms of when customs clearance happen on board vessels. There are some cases where we see the declarations provided by the ship seems to be challenged every now and then. So that's another area. And thirdly, if I may say, there are some cases where the port state control inspectors, when they come on board, they do challenge on particular areas on board the vessel, which can be different depending on where they call. If they're outside in very many miles away in terminals and so on, the challenges can be severe because they know that immediate access is not possible because the vessel is not necessarily on a mobile reach. They have to use a satellite phone or other mechanisms to get hold of these grievance systems that are available on land. If you're close to Apapa or Tin Can Island, or let's say in One, you can approach these agencies much quickly. So I think that time factor, that you're so far away from ports close to land, is kind of used as an additional mechanism to see how they can challenge the vessel. So there are three areas, as I mentioned. There is the use of passports and seafarers' discharge books is one. Secondly, there are issues related to custom clearances on board vessels. And thirdly, we also see port state control related challenges that are happening on board vessel. And farther they are out, the challenges seems to be more than closer they are to land, because the access to grievance systems are more readily available.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Perhaps this is a good place for us to again summarize the finding now, because in fact, our topic says, how do I choose integrity and win in the maritime sector? Maybe I should make it a more fundamental question. Can I choose integrity and win in the maritime sector? The answer seems to be yes, you can. So we have not chased away corruption. We have not fought corruption, but we have built an integrity system in parallel to a system of corruption. So can I choose it? How do I choose it and win? We have said, if you will complain, if you will follow the standard operating procedure, because no use complaining if you are non-compliant. And if you are non-compliant and you want to do the right thing, but you are blocked by the officials who says you should pay them, you should complain. Because in that instance, the whole system for integrity will come and still support you. That yes, pay your fine, carry out the remedial action, but don't pay it to the official, pay it to the government coffers. So even if you are wrong, is no reason for you to choose the path of corruption. You can still choose the path of integrity and do the right thing. Have I summarized this correctly? And maybe you can use it to make your closing statements, Mr. Menon and then Mr. Bakari.
Yeah, thank you, Soji, and I think you have summarized it very well. I would like to quickly conclude by saying and echo what you said, that today now there is a choice for everyone to choose integrity, though despite you have these challenges. And with that choice, you're able to make a chance, take the chance to report, because we are able to support you and we are able to help you. And therefore, by taking the chance, you can make the change that you want to see wherever you are, in any port and terminal that you're calling. So the 3 C's is what I would like to say. There is a choice, And then with the choice, take a chance to report, and thereby, you can find the change that you want to see. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bakari.
Yeah, I think impunity is giving way because nothing will happen is no longer the issue. In fact, something will happen. Redress will happen. Resolution of the matter will happen. Retribution will happen. We have seen cases where funds have been refunded if it was, illegitimately taken. So funds have been refunded, and arrests have been made in the instances because ICPC have actually prioritized infraction by government officials and agencies. So arrests have been made in the last couple of days. I think 4 immigration officers were arrested at Apapa Port, and 7 cartons of frozen fish. Am I still on?
Yes, you are on, sir.
Okay. So the nothing will happen syndrome is no longer the case. Something will happen, and what will happen is you will have justice if you dare report, and you can choose integrity to report when there is any infraction. Do the right thing, but if the other person is not doing the right thing, report. When you report, that particular person will face the consequence of his action. So there is consequences for whatever action anybody takes at the port sector now. I can only enjoin everybody to use the platform. Use the platform, report, do the right thing consistently, and if anybody out there is not doing the right thing, report such a person, and something will be done to redress the case.
Yes, sir. But many of us are afraid of esprit de corps, where those of us who are in uniforms, we band together. So you went to report my colleague. Wait till your next consignment comes. You will suffer. How do we encourage people that is not a factor in this current setting of how to get integrity for yourself?
I can tell you that esprit de corps does not apply in this particular instance. We have a job to do at the port to support the ease of doing business policy of the federal government. We have a responsibility, and it will be inimical to our own responsibility if people keep saying that the port sector is not working. It means that we are not working. So we will not collaborate with anybody. We will not connive with anybody to jeopardize good name that ICPC is building for itself and that ICPC wants to build for Nigeria. There is no compromise, no room for compromise at all. Officials will have to do the right thing so that Nigeria's name will be off that ignoble document. So there's no room for compromise at all. As far as ICPC is concerned, there's no room for compromise. Officials will have to do that.
Do we have any testimonials from any captains? Has anybody ever been whipped on their return to Nigeria that, oh, you reported us the last time and now you're in trouble? Has there been any threats? Have the threats to captain and crew been increasing, or has it been decreasing? What is your opinion, or what is the evidence that you have?
Yeah, so going back to the cases that I mentioned, with the number of cases, we have seen no backlash or retribution of any kind for the same master who comes back with the same vessel to Nigerian waters. I know specifically of some companies who do call regularly, but some of them also call many ports within Nigeria. So when they're able to get a successful grievance process in one port, when they call a subsequent Nigerian port, they have not seen any form of backlash. So I want to keep that steam going, and this is where we try and encourage all our shipmasters with various companies that we are part of the membership to continue that process, because we see that success happening slowly. So that is why I would like to say there is evidence from what we have heard, from narratives from masters, that who have made these complaints, they have not seen any form of backlash so far.
Okay, so distinguished ladies and gentlemen, there we have it. We're hearing that you can choose integrity and win, but it is not something anybody can do for you. You are going to have to stand up for your values. You're going to have to stand up for your own integrity and insist on the right thing being done. If you choose that path, which I admit is scary, but if you choose that path, there is support. You will get support from the Nigeria Shippers Council. You get support from the Maritime Anti-Corruption Network. You will get support from the ICPC. And strangely, you will get support from the leadership of the organizations you are complaining about, because it's not the people you are dealing with who you will be reporting to. It is going to be taken above, way above their heads, and the report will be done. Consequences will be meted out also to the persons, and you will get redress. We have evidence that this has happened over and over and over again without anybody receiving any kind of retribution, because we are not fighting corruption. We will leave fighting corruption to the ICPC. They have the power. We are merely building integrity. Nobody's fighting you for building integrity, for providing alternatives to corruption. So that is the secret, that yes, Nigerians say if you fight corruption, corruption will fight you back. Well, we are not fighting corruption. We're merely building integrity and taking a choice that leads to integrity. So distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you. If you have not already filled our poll, our feedback form, please give us feedback so we can improve. We'll be very grateful for that in the next 30 seconds as we prepare to close. Do we have any final comments from attendees or any final question before we wrap up for the day? We'll be grateful if we can have that right away.
Just to say that I agree that Nigerians, we have a choice now. We can choose integrity. We have the choice to do the right thing and to do it rightly. And the right thing to do is to practice integrity in all that we do. If we practice integrity, in fact, there is no more, no better fight against corruption than to install integrity. When you install integrity, corruption will have no way. So you have pushed corruption to a corner. Integrity, integrity, integrity is the word.
Okay, Mr. Menon, somebody said that some other countries are beginning to look at the arrangements that Nigeria has put in place. Is that true?
Yes, I can say that there is incremental change happening in the right direction in the country, and we see that. It's very evident. We have spoken about that. So there is a choice, and this is something we see that has been taken very well in the region. Number one, in the West African region, we are working closely on that. Also in the continent, I must say there is a lot of voice being promoted on the work that is being done by Nigeria and the government of Nigeria. And not beyond that, I must say there are other countries like we are working in, for example, in India and Ukraine, where we see how we can use this model to see how it could fit in best purpose for those countries. I must say that not all challenges are the same in every country. They're unique to every country. That doesn't mean that one solution fit all either. But nevertheless, the framework of these models could be very well used in other places. So you're absolutely right. It could serve as a model for many places across the globe.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for those of us who have joined this event. We look forward to having more events, new events next year. And we will try to announce them way ahead and try to give you a schedule for the year, if that is possible, so you can plan ahead and plan to attend. So distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Thank you for spending your time to us, but this is where we leave it for today. Join me in thanking Mr. Demola Bakare from the ICPC, Mr. Moses Fadigbe from the Shippers Council, and Mr. Vivek Menon from the MACN. Thank you. And he's joining us from Copenhagen, I
Yes.
believe, or yeah. Okay, thank you very much, sir. From us, it's goodbye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Well, bye-bye. Bye-bye, my friend.
Thank you.